Gentlemen, I'm here with Adam Lyons. I've been looking forward to this conversation. If you don't know who Adam is, originally from London, but now lives just outside of Austin with his wife and his 5 kids. It was several months ago that I was at an event here locally in Austin, and somebody had said, oh, and they learned of what I did with Front Row Dads. They're like, you have to meet Adam. And so, as I normally am, a little skeptical. I do my homework. I start listening to a few shows, and I'm enchanted by the genuine nature of Adam. I'm impressed by what he's built. And as I'm learning, and I say that because I'm becoming friends with Adam, is that he truly puts family first, which is the guys I want to speak with on this show. From a business perspective, he's boosted revenue. You'll read this in his bio, right? Boosted revenue for 2,200 small businesses since 2020 with a 5-step process, something he calls the SMART Blueprint. The process helps experts uncover new revenue through customer insights, analytics, testing, and research. And one of the reasons that I mention all these things on, the Front Row Dads podcast is that we have 6 pillars, guys, and one of them is business evolution. And the goal is to intelligently grow our businesses so that we can be family men with businesses, not businessmen who happen to have families. And so we're going to talk about family today. We're going to talk about something personal that Adam's excited about, which I'm excited to prompt this question, which we'll lead with in a moment. But I'll also tell you that from kind of a local level, this also caught my attention. He's doing big stuff kind of around the world, let's say, with clients everywhere. But he also grew the local Dungeons and Dragons shop here, again, outside of Austin, to 36,000 during the pandemic. 36, he grew it by 36,000% during the pandemic. Very different statement there. But one of the things that my team wrote that I loved about this intro is that he created this system to help real experts compete with the fake ones. And I thought that was so interesting because it's like there are some really terrible business owners out there who are great at marketing their business, but how do we put the true experts on the map and let people see them? So Adam, welcome to the show, brother. It's so good to have you here.
Dude, great to meet you. I'm a huge fan of Front Row Dads. Like what you guys are doing is just phenomenal. Yeah, great. So super excited.
Yeah, man. And I feel like that's because there really is a true alignment. That's what I felt in my heart was like, who you are is exactly who we're attempting to be, who we're choosing to be every day. So let's start this conversation in a fun place. In a place that might help people to understand your heart a little bit. And I don't know if that many people lead here with their podcast interviews, but you're into sword fighting. What does that tell us about you, man? I never, ever in 700 episodes on 2 different podcasts have I ever brought this up with a guest.
Well, which I love. And by the way, you're totally invited to come to sword fight. That's, and anyone
listening, dude, I'm a yes for that. Yes. I don't even know what I'm signing up for, but hell yeah.
So when I was 7 in school, in England, you get to choose what sport you want to do. And I got a bursary, which is like a scholarship into a very prestigious school, but I grew up with no money. So I grew up incredibly poor. And so I'm in this school with all these incredibly rich children and I'm like a nobody. And, my dad's like a janitor. And the choice is cricket, soccer, football, and fencing. And so I took up fencing and all the rich kids had all the good equipment and I got beaten every time because my sword broke. Like it was just a typical rags to riches story. But I got to a point where I was so competitive that they used me as a boxing bag for the top players. So I wasn't allowed to beat them or get good equipment, but they could practice against me. And so I was in the B squad and the B squad were all losers, but I would win. Not always, but sometimes. And the coach refused to teach me because these were like the all-star players. Now, this was actually the #1 fencing school in all of England. I didn't know that when I went to the school, but it was the top school. Anyway, eventually I left the school and I ended up going to a local school in like the poor area I grew up in. And I re-signed up for fencing classes. And now I had actual coaching and tuition. And where this story comes to a head is, at probably 18 years old, I end up coming head to head against the team that I trained with with my friends from school on the team, and I won. And it would have been an amazing movie if anyone made it, but no one did. But it was great. And so I've loved sword fighting. But at about the same time, I played Dungeons and Dragons, which you mentioned I have a Dungeons and Dragons shop. And I got invited to go to a live action role play event, which live action role play gets a bad name in America, understandably, because, and I'll explain why, believe it or not, it's to do with medical insurance. Medical is so expensive in America that a lot of the insurance companies won't let you fight the way they do in the UK. In the UK, it's very common for an ex-rugby player, which would be an ex-American football player, to pick up live role play as a way to drink and sword fight. And you imagine a bunch, like 3,000 huge dudes drinking and then beating the crap out of each other in armor. That's what they do. So I came to America and I was like, I can't wait to LARP. And I turn up and they're like, today we're sewing cloaks. I'm like, come again? What is this? Like, this was not what I thought it was. And I'd been telling my girlfriend, it's going to be so fun, and she's like, these are a bunch of nerds that don't fight. So anyway, I was very disappointed because that was actually, I prefer that to fencing because you fight with swords and shields and armor and it's great. But in America, they're using pool noodles, whereas we use like rubber coated carbon fiber rods, which hurt a lot more. And anyway, and there's some people in America, I don't want to bash all of it because some of it, but I found out in Montreal, there is an event that is based on the one I go to in the UK. It's a 400-acre purpose-built medieval village with 5,600 people that fight in armor on a battlefield, full contact, alcohol, go. And so I signed up 10 years ago, and I've been flying to Montreal on a regular basis with all my armor. I have a 3-story cabin I built in the medieval village. You can like pay to build. So I have a cabin in Montreal with my armor inside it, and I've got like a 4-poster bed, and yeah. So it's June. So my big event is in August. So I'm in deep training mode right now. I'm fighting like for about 3 hours a day, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, in armor, and of course my kids are involved. My kids sword fight. My 13-year-old is pretty much untouchable even by adults, which I'm pretty proud of. So yeah, I sword fight.
That is remarkable. Okay, so many questions. Let's start with, what does this provide to you? Is it a way to get out the rage and the energy? Is it a way to, is it strategic like chess? Is it all of the things?
Yeah, I love that you said chess. Most people equate sword fighting to chess. It's speed chess. My sword, the way you can think about it, sword and shield makes a difference. You use single sword. The sword can block 1/6 of my body at any one point. So my goal is to predict where your sword will strike and place it in one of 6 defensive areas to defend it. And typically it will passively be in one of those 6, and I'll move it actively to an opening that you see. Now we're playing a very advanced game of rock, paper, scissors, where I'm trying to block and strike and return, and we're using 360 motion. I mean, it's amazing. It's super fun. But at 43 years old, or 42, I'm 43 at the end of this year, it keeps me in shape. It keeps my mind sharp. It gives me hours of playing with my kids. Like, I love my kids, and I'm super into the things they're into, and that's something we can talk about because I've got a whole system for that. But I think it's just as important that my kids get to love the things that I loved as a child and I'm into. And so I encourage that as well. But yeah, it's super fun, but it's more than that as well. The game that we do, the sword fighting game, involves negotiations, politics. The way it works is there's 5,600 people divided up into groups of about 50 people. And there'll be a big battle with 2 sides. Who is on each side is based on negotiating. So you have to go through and negotiate with the heads of each of the little guilds of 50 people and convince them to be on your side. And then once the sides are decided, then you fight. So you can be outnumbered 4-1 if your negotiations suck. And as someone that does mergers and acquisitions for a living, as someone that makes my money doing business deals, I always laugh. The average guy in business is doing maybe 1 or 2, maybe 4 big deals a year. I negotiate like hundreds of deals a week for fun, because I'm doing that just to get people to join my army. And so my reps, which I know from sword fighting is the most important thing. Bruce Lee said, right, I don't fear someone who knows 1,000 ways to punch. I fear someone who knows 1 way to punch and practiced it 1,000 times. So likewise, I drill negotiating where I actually care about the outcome, because I really care about who's on my side. When I'm doing that for fun, how are you going to compete in a real business deal? I'll turn up and do a negotiation. And I'm like, yeah, I just walked out of one. In fact, at the beginning of this podcast, I said, hey, give me a second. I just want to finish typing to somebody. You had no idea, but what I was typing was a negotiation of 5 fictional territories in this game. And I was confirming receipt of those on behalf of the Southern Kingdom. So, and that's what I'm doing just before going on a podcast.
Dude, I could not have imagined enjoying this interview any more than I am right now, man. Holy shit. That's so wild. I'm so glad you went there, because my question is going to be, what does sword fighting teach you about parenting, teach you about business, teach you about life? Which is informing which more? Are you bringing all of what you learn in business to sword fighting? Is sword fighting bringing all of it back home? Is it just all yes and constantly?
Man, I'm going to deviate this podcast. You're going to hate me, but let me tell you a story, and this is really important. 3 years ago, I had a stroke. I had a stroke due to a medical condition that wasn't diagnosed at the time. It was probably 4 years ago. And I lost the ability to speak for a few days. Anyway, and you can still see like half my face doesn't move properly as much, but it's significantly better. Anyway, it's not that was a wake-up call, but it made me take a step back from certain things. One of the things that I took a step back from was sword fighting. It was taking, as you can tell, I'm texting people with the podcast, and I'm fine now. I've got my medication. I could have got back into it, but I didn't, out of habit. Well, in the game, I became a knight due to doing a lot of very honorable things. And I pride myself on being an honorable person. As my wife says, in a video game, I will only choose good choices. And she goes, it's a video game. Be a bad guy for once, but I won't do it. I'm like, no, because to me, it's who I am. So I learned last February that when I didn't go back, my army actually was 200 people, not 50, because I'm very good at what I do. And I found that my army had betrayed the king and turned against the person that made me a knight. And the king messaged me privately and said, hey, I don't know if you're ever coming back, but I just want to make sure you knew this had happened because this is your army. And he's like, I know you don't come anymore, but you should be aware this has happened. I then learned that it was actually 3 people that voted on behalf of everyone. And this really struck a nerve. When you think about like politics, somehow my kingdom used to be each person gets a vote. They changed the rules over 3 years so 3 people could make a decision on behalf of 200. So I made some phone calls and I found that some of the people in my guild were upset. They didn't want that choice, but felt they had no choice. And I recognized that my failure to attend, even though it was a hobby, was having a negative impact on potentially 200 people. So I contacted the king and said, there's an event in March. I said, I'm going to come to the March event, which is a politics only event. And he said, why? You've given up the game. And I was like, I made a vow to you as a knight in the game that I would uphold your kingdom. And he's like, yeah, but that's a game. In the real world, it doesn't matter. I was like, you don't understand. A vow is a vow. And I don't know if I'll come back forever, but I will undo what has been done wrong. And so I flew to Montreal alone, turned up to the Southern Kingdom where everyone booed me as I turned up. There's like 60 people there ready to beat me up because they think I've turned. And I declared civil war against my own guild with just me willing to fight 199 people. And the Southern Kingdom are like, are you serious? You're willing to fight 199 people alone? I was like, absolutely. And they're like, no one agrees with you in your guild. I was like, I don't care. I will fight them all because I'm honorable. In doing that, one other guy from my guild went, I didn't know you'd be back. I'm with you. This caused a huge scene. I mean, there's a couple of thousand people there, and my guild suddenly is in the middle of a civil war, and I pulled a whole bunch of them back that wanted to be honorable, and we called the rest of the guild oath breakers. Anyway, my point is, how does this all relate to family and everything? It's a chance for me to prove I am who I know I am. In the real world, you don't often get to be honorable. You don't often get to showcase it in such a manner. I get to stand in front of thousands of people and make it clear that I know who I am. And in doing so, even though my kids couldn't be there for this one, but I know it. I know I flew to Montreal and stood up to 200 people that wanted my head and stood there confidently and said, this is who I am. I know who I am. And I stand by it. When I came home and my kid's like, hey, Dad, how was the weekend? I'm like, well, let me tell you what your dad did. And I get to share a story that is straight out of a movie or a book, but the hero is me and I did it. I'm remembering it. I'm not imagining it. I'm not making up some fake story. And then when my kids watch, people come and fly to come and sword fight me. So a good friend of mine is Chris Casamassa, by the way, who, if you ever get a chance to have him on the show, you should. He was the original Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, the movie, the 1995 movie. And he's a world-class martial arts champion. And he flew to my house to sword fight me. And when my kids get to watch me fight against a 10th Dan martial artist who's won countless tournaments, and when I win, which I did win a bunch of fights, my kids are like, my dad can beat Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. That's what I get out of it.
That's brilliant. Was he better than you thought he was going to be?
He's awesome. And he was actually my hero growing up.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased that I managed to win some fights. And I will say that I pity anybody that thinks that they're going to do good against that guy.
That's so great.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I mean, just
that's awesome. Chris Casamassa.
Chris Casamassa. I can directly he's awesome. Okay. Yeah. And a dad, great dad as well.
That sounds fun. I just went back to, at one point in my life, being in a pool hall playing Mortal Kombat with a couple friends.
Yeah.
Let me also, since we're on, which I really appreciate the tangent that you took there, and it really isn't, because it all feels to be lining up just perfectly. You know, I've had this conversation recently with a friend here who lives in Austin, who has a really big platform, you know, millions of people. And we were talking about politics and speaking up, sharing your voice. And I'm curious from your perspective of how much then do, you know, in that space that you're speaking of, you're talking about the politics of that and taking a stand for what you know is right. How do you view that in this world with your platform or your influence or being on podcasts with things that you see that were politically charged? How do you either choose to speak up or, hey, this isn't the time or place to make that my issue or an issue?
I love that. A great question. And actually, first time anyone was asking me about politics ever, which I love. Coming from England, I will say that politics in America is terrible. You have a terrible system, and most people are uneducated about how it works, both sides. I recognize that as a Brit, I can't ever become president. I'm American now, but I can't become president because I'm not born here. It's not an option. Therefore, I have no real way of doing anything to impact anybody in any way. And it's also not, in my opinion, not my job to educate on politics. There are people that are better at that than me, and they should be doing it, and people should be looking out for it themselves. But I do have a very strong view, and that very strong view is I don't like the fact that the medical system in America is so expensive and there isn't healthcare available. In the UK, we have free healthcare, which is also terrible, by the way, and I do want to state that. But we also have paid healthcare. And the free healthcare keeps the paid healthcare in check. And this is something no one really discusses, because I can always choose to pay if I don't want to wait for the ridiculously long lengths of times for free. But if I don't have money, I can get it. I just have to wait. And I like that system, because the medical practices in England know they have to keep their prices down because there is a free option. So it's cool because it's actually affordable. Even if you pay, and then it's faster. So I like that. I think that's a better system. I don't like the free one, but I like there's checks and balances. And for the people that need the free one, when I was growing up, the free one was the only option. So I lived off of that as a kid. I also know that it can take 6 months to get seen, but still, it's better than not getting seen. The way I stand up for that in America is very simple. In my company, we offer full medical coverage. We pay for the most expensive one. My staff can all choose where they want to get seen. We pay the most we possibly can, so their copay is the absolute minimum. And for certain staff members, we've covered their children and wife in that situation where they couldn't afford it themselves. So I stand up in the only way I can for the people that I can stand up for.
I appreciate that. How do you think about, and maybe this continues to take us on the journey into family, which, how do you, the question is, how do you talk to your family about politics? Do you talk to your wife about it? Do you talk to your kids? In what ways? How do you gauge the age appropriate? Hey, let me show you this movie. Let me show you this. Let's read this book. Let's talk about this thing that's happening in the world. And I realize that could be a day-long, podcast by itself.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. So the way that I raise my children is nothing's hidden from them, but we allow magic to exist. And this is actually something that me and Tucker Max had a disagreement on, not an argument, but like he's a buddy of mine. And
wait a minute, Tucker disagreed with you about something? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So, but it's about Santa Claus.
He's in our crew, by the way.
Yeah. No, I love Tucker, but about Santa Claus, because he was like, he told his children Santa Claus doesn't exist. We want our kids to believe in magic, and we want that because we want to cultivate their imagination. And we have a way that we do Christmas. We don't I don't know if you know the idea of rich Santa, poor Santa. Do you know this concept?
No, tell me.
People with rich families, Santa has money. People with poor families, Santa has no money. And so you train your children that Santa loves rich kids more. So to offset that, it's very simple in our household because we don't want our kids to believe that. So Santa fills the stockings of the kids with candy and a couple of little toys. The big presents, all the presents come from us. As the kids get older, they recognize that Santa isn't dropping all the presents off. The parents are buying 99% of the parents. And they start working out and they say, hey, Dad, I don't think Santa exists. Like, I think it's you and Mom, because the candy and the stockings what you guys normally buy, right? They work it out. And at that, I say to them, okay, well, I'm going to let you into a secret. You need to come and have a talk. So sit down and I'm like, listen, well done for working that out, but you're Santa. And the kid's like, what do you mean? I was like, see, we are Santa for you, so you can have the magic. And now you've worked it out. It's your job to create the magic for the little kids. And so in doing that, you do this reveal and you let them know that they're Santa. I was like, and with that, it's your job to bring good into them. With that, it's your job to create magic for other people. The magician isn't actually doing magic. The magician knows what's happening, but the crowd are amazed and they're entertained. Likewise, you're now the magician. You're Santa. It's your job to create that amazement for other people. And so that's kind of how we do it. And so I love Tucker's angle, which is, he doesn't ever want to lie to his kids. And I don't think of it as a lie. I think of it as a magician and showing the trick. So, a difference of opinion, but we take politics the same way. We take religion the same way. So one day, one of my kids says to me, and so we homeschool our kids, 5 kids, we homeschool them. And my kid suddenly says to me, hey, Dad, it's raining today. God must be mad. I'm like, come again? And he goes, God must be mad. It's raining. That's what God does when he's angry. He creates rain. And I was like, first of all, how did you hear that? Because that's not what we teach. And it turns out grandma's been taking him to Sunday school without telling us, which is fine. But I was like, okay. I was like, look, I don't have a point on God for you. I was like, I think religion is something we have to discover for ourselves. So I love that you're discovering it with grandma. I was like, I would have done it a bit different. So we're going to have this discussion. I was like, first of all, it's not God that is making the rain right now. Maybe God made the process that created the rain, but God isn't choosing that rain cloud. I was like, that's precipitation, and you should know how that works. And so he's like, no, Dad, God makes rain. And I was like, all right, so if I can make rain, and he goes, well, you're a God. I'm like, all right, prepare to call me God. And so I get this huge thing of water with a saucepan lid, and I boil it, and I pull it up, and I get a cloud, and then I get rain, right? And my son's like, you made a cloud. And, he was like 6 at the time. I was like, yeah. I was like, it's steam. That's what that is. It's the same, and it's evaporating, then the condensation's dripping. That's what's going on. And so I was like, but listen, I need you to fully understand all religions, not just one. It's like in England, we learn every religion and then you choose. I was like, so I'm cool with you going to Sunday school, but you got to learn the other religions. So we sit down on YouTube and I find a bunch of videos aimed at children on a summary of every religion. I'm like, now watch these. And so I have, in my office, I have a little area where my kids can sit and they can join me while I'm working. And there's no one there right now, but normally one of my kids will be sitting on the sofa. So he sat there and he watched these videos, got his headphones on, he's learning everything. It's like 2 hours of watching videos about religion. And then I sort of like working and I turn around and my son's sitting there and he's got his hands like this and his legs are crossed. I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, shh, Dad, I'm meditating. So sorry. Wait, about 30 seconds goes by and he goes, Dad, I've realized I'm a Buddhist. I was like, all right. And since that day, my kid is convinced he's a Buddhist. And you know it, because when he's about to get grounded, he's like, 1 minute, Dad, I've got to meditate right now. I'm like, oh, of course, convenient meditation. But so that's kind of how we do it. We do the same with politics. So when Trump and Biden were against each other, my oldest child, who's 13 now, he's 11 at the time, he had a lot of questions and he had a lot of hate that I think he'd picked up from some other family members that are extended family members that were very pro-Trump and anti-Biden. And so I countered and I showed all the counter arguments. And then my son's like, oh, so you don't like Trump? I was like, well, no, I'm not saying that either. And then I countered Biden. And then my son looked at me and he goes, Dad, I'm really confused. I don't know what to do. I'm like, good. Because so's everyone. I was like, good. You can be confused. I was like, and I want you to be confused. And then I want you to work it out based on what you think. But don't just listen to one half of the family. Really understand both sides of the argument. And if you're confused, you have succeeded in being as smart as your dad, who's 42 years old, because I'm just as confused. I was like, so I typically control the things I can control. I was like, you don't get to vote till you're 18. I was like, but we do have a chicken farm and we produce eggs. And one of the fears back then was the cost of eggs. I was like, so we can get eggs for free. I was like, so why don't you instead focus on your chores on the farm? And if there's someone you know that can't afford eggs, let me know and we'll get them some eggs for free. How about that? And he was like, okay. I was like, there we go. That's what we can control. And you got 5 years to figure out your confusion, and there'll be different people then, and you can decide then. So that's kind of how we handle politics.
You seem to me really solid, Adam. Like you're connected to your core. You know who you are. You have some guiding principles, some values. And through that, the clarity of your decisions comes through. Where do you, or have you, if you can tell us a little bit of the vulnerable side of things, of like, where do you not feel solid? I mean, what knocks you down from time to time? What takes you off center?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the reality is, I suffered from depression since I was about 16 years old. And I have deep depression, suicidal thoughts. I mean, I'm the deepest you can get. And I was thinking about Robin Williams, who took his own life. And I think when you're that depressed, it becomes very easy to want everyone else to be happy. And you get a clarity of vision of the world. And my depression is based on a number of things, which I'm well aware about. There's childhood trauma. I grew up in a very poor area, and that comes with a certain level of upbringing. And I always, it's funny, because I actually had a depressive episode last week, and I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, I resonate with at least Jay from Men in Black. I was like, my depression is just a desire to not remember what's happened to me and what I've done. Well, not what I've done, but the scenarios I've been put through. I was like, and that is devastating. Like, my brother passed away when I was younger. And so going through life knowing that I don't have an older brother anymore is devastating. And so in the sad moments, I think, well, I can't phone my brother. I can't call him. And that hurts on a level I can't explain unless you've been through that. Knowing that from a large part of my life, I would phone up my brother and be like, hey, what do I do now? And that guy isn't there. And there's no one else I trust who I've known my entire life that I can ask that question to, because my parents aren't that parent figure to me. My brother was. And so even though it's not my parent, my brother was kind of more my parent. And so that's devastating. And to see that there's nothing I can do about that is very hard. So on a daily basis, I have to remind myself, you got to get up. You got to do things that I don't want to do. You have to do this next step. So it makes it that much easier for me, I think, as weird as it sounds, because I've already had a struggle to get out of bed in the morning. I've already had a struggle to shower, because in depression, you don't want to take action. And it's the perfect time for this podcast, because I literally got off of it yesterday. And so it's so clear to me, like, you know, I don't want to eat food. I don't want to work out. I don't want to do anything, but I keep doing it. And I'm doing it through discipline and following the core of knowing not who I am, but who I'm supposed to be.
Mm.
And my actions are based on who I'm supposed to be, not who I actually am. And I'll give you a really good lesson for everyone here. And that is, never rely on your kids when you're feeling down. It's not their job to pick you up. And I've never done it. And then last week, my daughter, she's 5 years old. She goes, Dad, can we go for a walk? And I was in like the darkest space, and but not for them, obviously. And so I'm like, of course, babe, of course, let's go for a walk. And we go outside, we go on a walk. I'm like, maybe this will cheer me up. Like, I've got it in my head, you know, maybe this is what I need, my daughter. And I could feel my brain being like, maybe I could rely on my daughter. And I knew like I've got a degree in psychology, and I've just finished my master's, but I don't have my certification yet. So I can't say I have a master's, but I think I'm going to have a master's within a couple of months. And I'm like, I don't do this. Don't rely on your daughter. This is bad. But I could feel my weakened state being like, maybe it'll be okay. And she goes, man, your brother dying must really make you sad sometimes. And I'm like, oh my God, thanks, babe. Right. That's exactly right now. That's it. And I was like, thank you, universe, for reminding me, do not rely on my kids for my happiness. And I was like, but it was good, because I ended up talking to her and explaining, like, look, that can happen. Sad things happen. But, you know, again, because I focused on the core, I didn't break down in tears, which is what I wanted to do. And I just said, yeah, it's tough, but, you know, you move on and you realize there are other people you have to care about, blah, 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 blah. And maybe that was the talk I needed. I don't know. But anyway, so I was like, let's go back home now. And so I, you know, took her back inside and you know, set her up playing what she was playing. But to me, it was a really good reminder that no matter who I am, who I feel I am, the person I am is based on choices. It's easy to choose not to fly to Montreal and stand up for a king that you made a vow for in a stupid game, unless your vow means something to you. It's not what it meant to him, it's what it meant to me. Likewise, it's who I mean to my kids and to my family and to my friends and to my clients that matters to me, not what they think. And that's the key.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. I was talking with a friend, was it yesterday, 2 days ago? I was having a really tough morning. It's been a hard couple of weeks. In fact, my voice, the way it sounds right now, is actually probably more of like the physical impact of what has been very difficult emotional stuff that I've been dealing with, mostly in my marriage, over the last 2 weeks. And I did not want to do anything. I was feeling like what you were feeling. I was sitting on the couch and I'm like, I don't want to read. I don't want to journal. I don't want to do business. I don't want to call a friend. I don't want to do any of it. None of it sounds good. And I thought, what I'm going to choose with all that present is to go walk the lake downtown. And then I did. And it was minutes into that walk that I started feeling better. Now, the new version of Jon at 47 years old is noticing those shifts more and more and more consciously. And man, it is making a difference. But I share that with you because I'm right there with you, man. A lot of it is just choice. And I also think it's good for people to see that the great Adam Lyons, you know, also has challenges. I find in this community now, which has been 7 years in the making, 330-ish guys from 15 different countries now in our membership group. And if I go back and I go, what have I noticed as a trend? I see men lean in to other men in the group the minute they learn that guy has a challenge. Because we have some really, really successful guys in the group. And yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, cool. That's awesome. Like, great. Like, and it's not to take away from it, but you want to talk about the guy that like really leans in. It's when they learn that somebody still battles. Like we still want to see in the movie and in the sword fighting, and then that we want to see an epic battle. And it kind of honors the victory.
Well, I think there's some really key points here that I always say to everyone, because people they'll look at what I've done and they're like, oh my God, you've done this, you're so successful, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, but you remember this. We teach this in sword fighting. The master is only the master because they have failed more times than the student has attempted to succeed. I'm good because I've failed more than anyone else. That's key. The other one is a diamond has no value until it's cut. The value is in the damage and the perfection of that damage. We are damaged. That's part of life. From the day we're born, cut the umbilical, we're doing damage. We're damaged from then on. It is that damage that makes us stronger. We break the muscle down to build it stronger. We emotionally break down to become emotionally superior to how we were before. That's how we level up as humans. And actually, I'll give you something, and maybe it doesn't help, but I've got to share it with you because my first company is, I've been a dating coach for 18 years. And relationship problems are the biggest thing that causes issues. And I'll share something with you. I've lost 6 friends in the last year, 3 of whom to suicide over women. And they're all men, all 6. And from my perspective, in my life, the number one cause of death that I have seen is suicide of men. Personally, that's not, not in the news, but just people I know. I've lost more men than women in my life, and 50% is suicide. So the number one killer of men that I know is suicide. So maybe that's a sample size. Maybe the people that hang out with me are more prone to it. I don't know. But the point is this, and this is a key component here. When it comes to relationships, the successful relationship is down to where you put the energy. And so when me and my wife have any issues or concerns or fears, one thing I'll do, and she'll do as well, is we reach out to each other. So I've never met a woman that doesn't like getting lotion on her feet. And so no matter how bad it gets, I will grab some lotion, I'll lotion her feet, whatever time of day, even in the middle of an argument. And what's kind of crazy is if you're having a disagreement with somebody and you're like, 1 minute, let me just grab something. And you go grab some lotion, you come back and you go, hey, let me just lotion your feet for a second. And she's like, what are you doing? I was like, your feet look dry. Let me make sure your feet are okay. We can keep talking. And then just lotion her feet and keep the discussion going if you want. And what will happen is that physical connection and the fact you're physically caring will remind you care, will remind her you care. You don't gain anything out of this beyond you remembering you care and her remembering you care. And then you keep the conversation going as if it was. The tone will change. You won't be communicating the same way. The problem won't go away, but the tone will change. And it can sometimes lead to a fix. Now, the issue comes sometimes like, no, don't touch me right now. I don't want to be touched. I'm like, I understand. I understand you don't want to be touched. In that case, would you be okay if we take a minute until you're comfortable with me lotioning your feet and massaging them just for a minute? We can pick up the discussion afterwards. But you're still the person I love more than anything in the world. And this simple act is a way that I can show you I care and remind myself that your feet are the ones that I want to massage and lotion more than anything. I was like, and this isn't for me. This is for you, but also for me. I was like, and if we can't get to a place where I can massage your feet, which is something you could pay somebody to do, a stranger to do, I was like, solving this problem is going to be really hard. So let's at least get to that stage where I'm allowed to massage your feet. Nothing else, just that, and put some lotion on. And then we'll probably be in a better place to have the discussion. So anyway, that's my 2
Brilliant.
cents.
I'm glad you shared it. I believe that too, man. Sometimes I'll say to Tatiana that if I can just, I go, can we just sit and maybe not talk, because the talking might be getting in the way, but maybe just not sex, but if some sort of touch, a meditation together, holding hands. Can we just walk in silence for 10 minutes and just hold hands? Like there's a lot that gets healed and communicated by something like that, a pattern that gets broken, if you will. There's a lot of genius to what you're saying, in my opinion. I really love that.
Yeah, thanks, man. When we get into dating stuff, it's pretty fun because I always explain to somebody, there is no emotion for love. We've already calculated all the emotions that exist, and I can prove it, which is if I say to somebody, show me happiness, they'll smile. If they show me sadness, they'll be like, make the sad face. I'm like, now show me love. And you can't do it because there's no facial expression for love, because love isn't an emotion. So now we know love isn't an emotion. That's a fact that we can prove just like that. What is love? Love is a chemical, and the chemical is known as oxytocin. Now, oxytocin, the love chemical or bonding chemical, is only released in good communication, laughter, touch, and sex. And then when a woman gives birth, it's also released, but that's a separate point. So she's not going to give birth to fix it, right? Instantly. That's not the solution we're looking for. That's not practical. Sex doesn't work during an argument. So we're left with good conversation, which isn't going to happen in an argument. So we've only got two tools left to remind ourselves of love, which is laughter and touch. They're the only tools that are left. And when you stop trying to solve it through things that can't work, good communication, sex, and pregnancy, we're left with, we've got to do touch and laughter. And so I will show a stupid meme, pull up a video and be like, look at this. I'll be like, hey, can we watch comedy for a second and get back to it? Or touch. And that's the start. And at least we have love. And from love, we can now, or oxytocin, we can now have that discussion, because cortisol, which is the stress chemical, which is the one that you're experiencing during an argument, cannot exist in the body at the same time as oxytocin. Oxytocin is a natural antidote to cortisol. You can't remove cortisol. It's a poison, is the better way of thinking of it. It's not actually poison, but it's a poison. And oxytocin neutralizes it. So once the oxytocin raises, the cortisol dissipates. And now you're no longer stressed and angry, and you're in love. Now solve the problem from there.
Man, that little piece right there could have been hard to put a price tag on that, my friend. It's hard to put a value on that. And I'm totally speaking from my own personal perspective right now, man. I'm sitting here because I'm like, holy shit, I needed to hear that. Like,
there we go. I mean, there was a reason for this, right? There's a reason.
You just really helped me personally right there. Thank you.
Oh, dude, my pleasure. Dating was my jam. I mean, 18 years, and I still own my dating company. I never got rid of it. And actually, it's funny because I buy and sell companies, but I won't sell my dating one. I've spoken about this before because I'm the expert in dating. Yeah. I've been voted the #1 dating coach in the world 3 years in a row. A lot of the biggest dating coach in the world are ex-students of mine. There's a dating coach by the name of Matthew Hussey that a lot of women know. I trained him and actually named his company. So like I'm behind a lot of major dating coaches that are more famous in the world, but it just wasn't the big career I wanted, but I still love helping people with dating. So I keep my dating company as a way of continually helping because I love it. It's the same kind of thing. It's at my core. If I sold it, I would still keep teaching it. So there's no point selling it. But yeah, dating's understood. We know the solutions to it. It's just not widely shared because we have to open up and share weaknesses, and people don't want to do that, which does make it tough. So yeah, maybe that was the point of the podcast today. Who knows? The universe wanted that to happen.
So I'm faced with a dilemma right now, which is all the things I wanted to talk to you about or ask you about, and looking at the clock. So what do I do from here, man?
Well, you can have me back anytime. We're local. I mean, we should totally hang out, and yeah, we can chat whenever.
You know what? I really like that. I have one more question I want to ask you about, but I would love to do that, man. I would love to have another conversation with you at some point. And because there's a couple other like real gems that I knew about from you that we didn't get to today, but I also don't want to force that in. I don't want to rush it. I don't want to try to make something that's not natural here. And this just feels like such a natural conversation. It went exactly where it needed to go. And sure. I want to honor that. What I would like to end on is I would like for you to take, and I know you determine the clock and the answer here of whatever you want, but what you're doing, this is a nice transition because we were just talking about your dating business. By the way, were you in the NACA APCA space at some point?
I wasn't.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if in the college speaking world, your dating business was.
It's funny. It was suggested I do it. I think I spoke at one college once, but never got into that space. Dating's like its own thing. In order to say the things you need to say to have the biggest impact, you're going to upset the most people, and they don't want you to say that stuff.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that's the problem with dating. You cannot say the things you need to say that need to be discussed. You need to talk about male suicide. You need to talk about the fact that it's linked to dissatisfaction in relationships. You need to talk about the fact that men aren't educated enough about how to handle relationships, and women aren't equipped to be able to handle it. There are misconceptions and bullying that happens in society and the media of both men and women. Like statistically, the first person to insult a woman based on her looks will be another woman. And yet most women will attribute that to men speaking derogatory about them, but it's typically a woman that will say it first. Likewise, most women never experience 60% of men that exist, meaning that on a dating site, only 40% of men ever get a match. That means 60% of men, the women are never getting to me. And in their heads, they're the bad ones, but actually they're the ones that don't know how to make a good profile because they've spent too much time focusing on being a good dad, having a good job. It's crazy. The guys that most of the women want, they're never seeing because they don't have good pictures. And they don't know how to take a picture because that's not anything they've ever put energy into. Whereas the guys that know how to make pretty pictures and create good bios are the ones most likely to mistreat women because they have so much experience of doing it. So there is these huge disconnects in the world of dating and a lack of knowledge about how to behave in a relationship that causes so many issues. So yeah, it's definitely a crazy thing, but I never got into it because of that. But I like teaching from my own little corner of the world.
Let's use that as our transition to how your business has helped the world. I want to get here because I think you can be helpful to a lot of people, including me, by the way. I was like, God, Adam probably has some really great advice for front row dads as a community on our quest to be at 1,000 members. So I would like to, I might be a client for you, Adam. I want to learn more about that. But
Thanks.
A lot of the guys here also, I need them to know about what you're doing so that they can potentially connect. The dating stuff, by the way, there are single dads in our group that
happy
yeah. Where would they go for that? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I have a dating website is askthedatingcoach.com. And actually this Thursday, we're doing our first dating podcast. I've avoided dating podcasts in the past. Most dating podcasts that are aimed at men are very controversial, and they do it on purpose to get the views. They say things that they know the men are going to agree with. But that in order to be good at dating, you have to hear both sides of the story. You're not going to want to hear the other side, but that's actually the key. So we're taking a podcast with a very different angle where we're actually going to show both sides. And we're going to push back against the overly aggressive male movement that is the pushback against what was the previous overly aggressive women movement off the back of Me Too. So we're seeing the counter push now. And this always happens between the two sexes, that it pushes one way or the other. We're going to try and sit on the fence and actually point out some real truths to both sides.
It's about time, man. Thank you. Jeez.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And we've got a really cool group. We actually have Michael Sartain is one of the top men's dating podcast hosts. He has a really successful podcast. He's coming on the podcast. And then we have a number of women who have big platforms, including a woman who wrote a book about attraction and is very pro-feminist. So we're gonna have both of them on the podcast, and it's absolutely gonna set up some sparks. But we're gonna find the truth in both their arguments. And so I'm excited for that. That's this Thursday. If you want to come and watch it live, by the way, you can, because we'll be recording it in our studio in Bastrop. So that's askthedatingcoach.com. And by the end of this week, there'll be a page up, askthedatingcoach.com/challenge, which is a 1-day challenge that we're inviting people to learn how to flirt. And just the basic parts, like most men don't even have a clue how to flirt. And so we're breaking flirt down into 5 simple steps, FLIRT, and we're explaining how it works and showing people how to do it. And then
that apply to a married guy who wants to keep dating his wife,
yeah,
who wants to learn how to just flirt with his partner of 20 years.
It's actually one of the things in there. That's absolutely,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's part of it because, you know, like I said, laughter is the key, by the way. If women will date the guy that makes them laugh the most, because laughter triggers oxytocin. So the focus of any guy, if you're trying to fix your marriage, is making her laugh. And if you can make her laugh more than anybody else, she's yours. This is why comedians typically date up, whereas like action stars date down. If you look historically. The comedians always get the hotter girls, and it's because they know what they're doing, because laughter is what triggers attraction. I spend most of my life trying to make my partner laugh, like all the time. And my kids, I'm always trying to make my kids laugh, but I'm always trying to make her laugh if I can. And I've all sorts of dumb ways to do it, like that are absolutely hysterical, but even just sending memes. But I will send them and make her watch them with me. I'm like, we're going to watch this one. And you learn her humor, you learn their humor. So that's a key component. But yeah, so yeah, it works. And then the other one is our business, thesmartblueprint.com. And we have a challenge there as well. So thesmartblueprint.com/challenge. We're doing a 1-day challenge on how to increase revenue in your company. Our theory is, if you took 1 day and you didn't do your regular day of work, and instead you just focused on increasing the revenue in your company, you'd probably do it. And that revenue would be increased forever. It would always be up. If you could raise it by 5% in a single day, it would always be 5% higher every day. And so we challenge people to come take part, and can we push your revenue up in a single day? And both those are free. We don't charge anything for them. And the idea is that it works and you have a great time, and you get to see us and you get to see what you think. And if you think it's good and you resonate with it, then you're welcome to enlist our services and have us help you more. Or you can just enjoy the results from the free 1-day thing.
I love it. So good. Bookmarked for the future, for a future conversation. How you turn your living room into a creative playground, book that you're writing with your family, generational wealth versus cash flow, all things that I wanted to ask you about. And I'm teasing the audience for more so that they make sure to come back for part 2 when
I'll give you one which I do want to share because I think it's huge. It's the floor is lava game. We all know the game. Kids love it since they were kids. I did it when I was a kid, right? You set pillows up. So I would recommend everyone, front row dads, you should all try this. Tell your kids that you now got a new game. The game is called The Floor is Lava. And the floor is lava can be activated by anybody in the family at any point by saying, the floor is lava in 3, 2, 1. And once you say that, everyone has to get off the floor. And anyone can do it at any time. Now, you've got to be aware that when you first develop this game, the kids are going to do this a lot. You're going to be cooking, you're going to be showering. But the fun, we're talking about laughter, the fun comes from frantically trying to get off the floor quickly. But what I like about it is it also reminds you to not ignore your kids, because you're going to be tempted in the middle of a stressful conversation to be like, not now, honey, right? But you can't do that because this is an ongoing game. This is real. Like, the floor is lava. Your kids are saving your life. You're going to get off the floor. And so I'll even right now, I'll just pick up my feet and be like, okay, I'm playing. And you keep doing the call, but your feet are off the floor. So we played this game and the kids loved it. And then just as the game started dying down, I was like, how can I make this bigger? And I'm always trying to be larger than life for my kids. So I go on Amazon and I Google, search in Amazon, lava rug. And sure enough, for $50, there is a giant rug that is patterned like lava. And I bought 2 of them, which is the exact size of my living room floor. And while my kids were asleep, I wake up early. I set up both the rugs so the living room floor was actual lava. And then they sell stepping stones on Amazon made out of foam. If you type in foam stepping stones, you'll find them. And it's for kids to play the floor is lava. So I bought these stone stepping stones and put them on the lava. And then I woke up my kids in the living room. I'm sitting on the sofa. And I'm like, oh my God, the floor is lava. And the kids come out of their bedroom. I go, what the? Because the floor is lava, like legit lava. And this stepping stone. We left it up for 3 days. And you could not be in the living room unless you're on a stepping stone. Like, even go get the remote control, step on the stepping stone. We all did it. It was lava for 3 days. And they still have it in their room. And I'm like, whenever the kids are bored, I'm like, guys, go get the lava, set it up. And they love it. They'll pull out the lava and they're bouncing around and they play tag and it's great. Anyway, it's like $200 to buy the 2 mats and the foam things. That $200 is so much value in terms of time and investment and stupidity with your kids. They will love it. They will remember that forever. It's like a core life memory unlocked. And for $200, I can't think of anything better you would spend your money on, where you're interactive with them. It changes the living room, so they're like remembering it. Anyway, you got young kids, best ever. Flora's
I
love.
love it, man. Adam, thanks for being here, dude. Thanks for the great conversation. I look
Thanks,
forward
bro.
to more. This has been a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, dude. Kids Connect.